There are many different types of costs you will incur when you're working on a project. Costs may be fixed during the life of your project, or they may vary as they're used. We'll explore fixed costs more in our next movie. There may also be rate changes for some of your resources during the course of your project, and you want to be able to capture that information. For example, our web designer's rates are going up as of the middle of March, so I need to be able to identify that his rate will increase for any work that he does for me after March 16th. In order to capture that information, I've opened up the project costs exercise file, and I've double-clicked on the web designer resource. I make sure that the costs tab is highlighted, which brings me to the cost rate tables where I can capture the costs for that particular resource. Rate changes during the projects are tracked here. Now, the first line in any rate table is always the default cost for that particular resource, and that's the one that we saw and entered on our resource sheet in our previous movie. I can track overtime here as well, and cost per use if that's appropriate. There are 25 lines within each tab of my rate table, so I can track up to 25 different rates or effective dates for this particular web designer if I've used him or her over a longer period of time. In this case, I just want to identify that this web designer's rates are going up on the 16th of March. I select the effective date column. I put in the 16th of March as my effective date, and I increase his standard rate to $35 an hour. Now, another quick highlight that you can use when you're working with this cost rate table is that project will automatically add or decrease by a particular percentage when it's working with its rates. So I know that this web designer's rates are going to increase further on the 13th of April by 10%. So I put my effective date as the 13th of April. Instead of trying to do the calculation myself that the rates are going up by 10%, all I need to do is type in plus 10%, click my checkbox, and the application automatically calculates the new effective rate with a 10% increase. So for those of you that would prefer to have the application do your calculations for you, here's a really easy way to just apply the percent increases that you're going to have on various costs rather than having to do the calculations in Excel or with a calculator and then retype them into the system. Another thing I may want to do is to have a different rate for this particular resource depending on the task that they are performing. For example, on this particular project, and this web designer has these fluctuating rates, but on the next set of tasks that I use the web designer for, perhaps I'm going to have them involved in the presentation that I'm giving to the client, I'm going to pay them even more because they are doing more project management rather than just straight designing. In order to identify a different rate dependent upon the task that the resource is performing, I can put that information in a different tab. So I have 5 different tabs available for me. I click over to tab B, and I put in an effective default rate for his presentation abilities at $50. So when he's working for me in a more of a management capability, I'm going to increase his rate and I'm going to pay him $50 an hour for doing that. In essence, you can create up to 125 rates for any one resource. So you've got 25 lines per tab, you've got 5 tabs. That's the total number of rates that you can track on any one resource within your application. So it's quite powerful and it gives you a lot of flexibility in order to track the costs per individual. So let's see how we can get this to reflect in our actual Gantt chart for this web designer. I'm going to click on OK to assign those different rates. And I'm going to go back to View, my resource usage, and I select the Present Storyboard Design Sketches to the Client under the Web Designer Tasks. In order to assign a different rate for that particular individual to do this task, I double-click on the task. It opens up the Assignment Information dialog box. On my General tab, I have a Cost Rate Table Allocation drop-down list. So I can determine which tab I want to go grab the information from in my cost rate table. In this case, I want to use the rates under tab B for this individual, which is going to increase the rate that I'm going to pay them to do that job. We'll take a look at the original amount was going to be $60 to do that particular presentation under his old rates. If I click OK to now assign rate plan number B, go back in there, I now see that my cost has been updated to reflect the $50 an hour rate that I'm prepared to pay that particular individual. So you can see that there are nice ways that you can update and increase and nuance the costs per task, per resource. Next, we're going to take a look at fixed costs and how we can accrue costs within Microsoft Project.